We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today. Good evening. Welcome to nufc Matters. Supermac and Gibbo on a Thursday. How are you, lads?
All right, Steve. Thanks. Hi, John.
Good to see you.
All right, boys.
Yeah, all good, lads, and great to be back with you two again as we discuss the last 7 days at Newcastle United. And I read a tweet today, Malcolm. It said that if Newcastle can beat Manchester City in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, don't be surprised if they draw 1970 Brazil squad in the semi-finals.
I think that's absolutely right. And then the 1966 England World Cup winners in the final.
Yeah, what a draw. I mean, we all sat there with bated breath, Mal. I'm sure you did as well. Many of us, just said it'll be Man City away, and of course it was. That's just the kind of season we've had now with cup draws.
Knew it. It's just that season. It started off tough enough. In all the competitions, we've already beaten Man City once, albeit that was at home. Away from home's a totally different kettle of fish. But we're not playing anywhere near as well in the second half of the season as we were in the first. So I'm not hoping beyond hope, I have to say.
No,
well,
I mean,
going in as the underdogs, aren't we, John?
I sat watching thing. It was amazing. I had the pad in front of me with each team, the number 1 Newcastle United, 2.
Yeah.
And every time they were doing the draw, David Seaman, thanks very much, David, I kept seeing everybody I wanted disappear. Coventry disappeared, then Leicester disappeared, and I'm thinking, and then we're down to the last. We were the last out. Number 1, the last.
We're always the last out.
I know.
Yeah.
And then when it come to the last 2, and I realised it was Man City, I thought at least let us be at home, and we're away. That's 4-way draws in the FA Cup. 4-way draws in the FA Cup this year. And what happens the next night? We are playing Wolves this weekend, so we're wanting them to get it down there. They beat Brighton, and they get the easiest draw, the one I wanted for Newcastle. They've got Coventry at home. Which is the draw I wanted for Newcastle United.
The thing is, John, if we're going to win a cup trophy, you have to beat the best.
I know, but not too early. Let's beat Wembley anyway. So if we don't,
we're having to do it constantly.
I mean, it's just. I mean, we went through enough, boys, at Ewood Park without the reward for putting up with all that to be Manchester City away.
Yeah.
I mean, what it means is we now concentrate magnificently on shoring up the Premier League and nicking one of those European places.
How did you feel about the game? I mean, John, you've already mentioned it. We'll start with you there. Yeah, I mean, it was a poor game. Newcastle were poor against Blackburn. There's no sugarcoating that, John.
No, I thought we were awful. I mean, I was looking for a lift after Arsenal, which was abysmal. But at least when Arsenal were abysmal, we were playing Arsenal, a top club. This club was 16th in the championship, 4 points off a relegation zone to go into League One. They sacked the manager, changed the manager. The new manager had steadied things a little bit, but he hadn't got a win since he arrived. We were facing that, and with 2 hours of play, we were second best. We were the second best team to them. They played well for who they are, and they did well because of a championship side, and they did good. We were poor again. We were sure. And you know what? This is now beginning to terrify me because we're getting worse instead of better. And players are coming back, but in fairness, the players that's coming back, and it looks good. You see Isaac back, you see Willett back, you see Barnes back, you see Anderson coming off the bench. But all of those guys aren't the guys we know. They're nowhere near up to speed. They're nowhere near the people of their reputation. The names look good on the team sheet, but at the moment, through no fault of their own, they're having to get the rust out of them and get back up, and they've got to start straight away because of the trouble we're in. But it makes a team sheet look better than the team is because they're not. It's not yet the Isaac we know, the Willock we know. Barnes is not done it. And people that have been in the team, Botman suffered through coming back quickly, and other players in the team are playing beneath themselves. The only fella taking out the keeper, the only fella that I think has been consistent and is now carrying the team is Anthony Gordon. And I think he's carrying the side at the moment. He is consistently decent, and the others on. I mean, if we look at
too much for him, John.
Yes. Oh, if we look at the last 2 games, Mal, we played Arsenal and we played Blackburn, and our 2 stars in those 2 games were 2 reserve goalkeepers. Carriers down at Arsenal and Dubravka. That tells us everything. That tells us everything, doesn't it? When the cover goalkeepers, the rank 2 and rank 3 keeper is our star performers. It tells you the mess that we're in, and I'm beginning to despair. I mean, guys, is it just me? I mean, I looked at the start against Arsenal, and I looked at the start against Blackburn, and knew we were going to struggle because we started so lethargic, so slowly, so one-paced, no high press, no enthusiasm. We looked a drained side, didn't you think? We started very slowly, guys. In one shit on the back foot.
We did, John, but before Blackburn had even mounted an attack, we retreated.
Oh, I mean, it is.
And so we were starting off of our keeper's toes. Now, let me take you back 12 months and it was a season that we did really well, reaching the Champions League qualification. When we played last season, we were playing on the halfway line. Centre halves and fullbacks were playing on the halfway line. Now we're playing on the edge of our penalty area.
We're not high pressing anymore.
No, we're not. We're not. Sorry, Steve. Not high pressing. You were saying we don't press high anymore. That intensity in our game, Steve.
We're not pressing high, no. And what's happening is that there's a big gap between the forwards and midfield. When our forwards are closing the opposition down, they're not getting any tight support from the rear, and the midfield in turn, they're sort of lost in the middle of nowhere because the back line has dropped right off, and we looked a really good side last year when we were squeezing it, when we were keeping it really tight in the opposition half. and we were knocking it about. And okay, it was tight for space, but we had that confidence and the controlling ability to get it, knock it, make a run. Everybody was doing it, all in cohesion. And right now, there is no cohesion whatsoever, and we're stretched out. The organisation of the side has gone. I really don't think that they are that working unit that we saw last year. In fact, it's far from it, and people are suffering by it. Anthony Gordon, he chases up front, but he's not getting any backup.
The last thing he needs is a call up for England, by the way. He's never had a rest.
Yeah, I know. And you know what I think as well, boys? When we have become predictable in teams like to play against us because they know what we are going to do, or should I put it, what we're not going to do. And when you're getting a bit of a rut results-wise and it's not going well, I'm a great believer that sometimes you need to just shake things up a little bit, not just to get the opposition thinking, but to get your own players thinking. You know, whether you go 5 at the back and push your two fullbacks right up on the wingers and get us up the field that way. But let us do something different. We play 4-3-3. Every game we start 4-3-3, and when we make subs, we make like for like subs. We'll bring off a winger and put on a winger. We'll bring off the centre forward and put on a centre forward. We don't change the pattern. We don't make the opposition think, and we don't have to think ourselves. And if you get into a rut, you sometimes just don't do things. I mean, I'm watching Blackburn game. I don't know if it was me, guys, or whether you felt the same. And the lack of urgency, the lack of movement, we were predictable. I mean, Shaw's coming out from the back and he's walking with the ball. And then he's standing.
Yeah.
He's standing
John,
in the midfield.
John,
he's standing in the midfield, just to finish, Malcolm. He's standing in the midfield with the ball at his feet and looking round to say, nobody's closing him down to take it off him, but he's not known. He's standing waiting for it. Now everybody marks up. There's nobody loose to pass it. And I'm thinking, where is the urgency? When we were best, when Malcolm was talking about us at our best last season, we played at a tempo. There's no tempo to our play now.
No, but we played in that tempo, John, in the opposing half.
Yeah.
Now, with all the players in our own half. And you're talking about Shah coming out. Shah was coming out and still 20-odd yards short of the halfway line.
Yeah.
And
then just standing on the ball. And then just standing on the ball. And then just standing on the ball. I mean, he would say in his defence, well, I'm looking for where to pass it and everybody's marked up. But we've got to quicken up play. Surely we've got to quicken up play.
Right. There's not the movement, but also I think we're way too stretched out over the pitch. And I go back to last season. I've got this picture in my head where we pushed right up to the halfway line. We were squeezing the opposition, and it didn't matter whether it was from the top of the league or the bottom of the league. We were doing the same to everyone, and it worked against everyone. And it was squeeze, and until they had little space, that they would give the ball away back to us, and we would then stretch things out a bit and start to play. And it was so effective. Right now, I don't think there's much understanding amongst players at all, that there's no real interpassing of any pace like we had last season. It's all very laboured. Everything we're doing is laboured. And maybe there's excuses to be made that with all the injuries that there's been, and maybe they'll talk about tiredness and what have you. But we're not thinking in the same way as we thought last season. And that was really organised, very positive, and let's get in on their toes. Don't wait for them to come on our toes. We go onto their toes. And that's what we were doing last season. And right now, Shah, he would come across the halfway line last season, and he would come and join the midfield, and all of a sudden he was 10 or 15 yards from the opposing penalty area. Now he comes forward 40 yards and he's still on the halfway line. You know, and also just another thing, John, that one of the things that I think is causing it is the way that we take goal kicks. You know, where we've got the goalkeeper and 3 defenders in our penalty area. For heaven's sake, knock it forward 20, 30 yards.
I think one of the problems might be as well, I'm wondering, Malcolm, when I look at it, and I know the back four has basically been the same this season as last season, when it's Trippier, Shaw, Botman and Byrne. It's often the same. But I wonder, last season when confidence was soaring, that came out and we did that and everybody was high pressing, and I think now that we're leaking goals like a colander, I think now the back four are so one-paced, they're all scared to push up for the ball over the top because there's not pace in the back four at all.
But they didn't have that fear last season, John.
No, that's what I'm saying.
They were just as slow then as they are now.
Yeah, but the difference, Malcolm, the difference for me is last season we were full of confidence, the whole team, and the back four pushed up, knowing the midfield would do it, and Big Joe Linton would smash them in there, and then up front they would have movement. Now, when they look at the record book and we'll let 4 in against Luton and we'll let 3 in at home to Forest and we let goals in on piece, the back four saying, "Well, I'm not gonna get up there because the ball over my shoulder," and we're done. And the lack of confidence because of the goals of let in, because of the fact that the midfield and the forwards aren't working as industriously as they did last season, that fear factor of being exposed is coming into everybody's soul. In the back four, the one thing we can't give them, and it was missing last season, but the confidence was sky high, and Joe Linton was doing things in front of them, and so was Bruno, and that is not happening now. Midfield's a shambles. Everybody's coming straight onto as a unit, and not individually, as a unit, and everybody's coming on the back four. And the back four are thinking, you know, we used to say that was the way Lascelles was. The back four is thinking, if somebody gets in behind me, we're dead because I can't catch them.
Yes.
And the lack of pace in our back four is frightening. And if they buy a centre half in the summer and they're talking about doing that, please make one of the first priorities is that the centre half has got pace, because we lack pace terribly at the back.
You're right, John, but that was the beauty of last season, because we were defending on the halfway line, that we weren't going to get caught for pace, because as soon as the opposing foot went back to knock the ball forward, we just dropped off, and it was exactly how Arsenal were playing back in the times of Tony Adams. And Tony Adams had no pace. He was a cart horse, for heaven's sake, but he was a damn good footballer. And Tony Adams never got caught. As soon as the foot went back to knock it forward, he dropped off. And so he gave himself the space. The ball was always in front of him, never behind him. And yet we're not dropping off because we've already dropped up. We never pushed up in the first place. We're so far back, and I don't know why. I keep looking and I'm thinking, why is it? And okay, it might be a complete lack of confidence. It might be that the injuries have taken their toll, and they put doubts in people's mind. But for heaven's sake, we start off from a goal kick with 2 players at least near the 6-yard area, and we're knocking little tiny balls in the penalty area. Well, for heaven's sake, that I really do not see the sense of it when we were playing in such a different way last season and being successful with it. And there's all these changes that have come in, and they are all for the worse. All for the worse, not the better. And I can't get my head round why it's happening. Okay, maybe a lack of confidence and what have you. And quite often you find that when people aren't that confident, they have this automatic thing of dropping off. It was happening under Steve Bruce for season after season after season that we dropped off so far that we were treading on the goalkeeper's toes all the while. But Eddie Howe, he changed that, and we pushed right up last season, right up to the halfway line. We squeezed the opposition right back into their half, and they're not going to score from 60 yards from goal, for heaven's sake. And so everybody was happy with that. And if the ball was going to come forward, people just dropped off, read it, got it, thank you, and started playing again. And we're doing anything but that this season. And I think, well, come on. We were successful with it last season. Let's go back to playing exactly that style. It can't get any worse than it is right now. It certainly can't. It really can't.
It's getting worse by the game rather than better by the game. It's getting worse by the game.
Yes.
Play like we did against Blackburn. We'll get walloped off Wolves, lads.
And Blackburn aren't Blackburn aren't a good side, Steve.
No, they're not. One decent player.
Look a great side.
They look like world beaters. They had one decent player.
Yes, but that was down to Newcastle, and we weren't giving them any real problems at all. That Blackburn could dictate where they wanted to go on the pitch, and they pushed Newcastle all over the place, whereas we should have taken that opportunity to say, right, let's push up, let's get to the halfway line, make them play in their own half, and it would have been a totally different game. But all of a sudden, the back line is dropping right off, and then everybody finishes standing on Dubravka's toes.
Yeah. Lots of questions coming in, lads. I want to try and get through a few of them. I do want to highlight something that was sent to us by Tim this week. Recognise this place, lads?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Right. Tim sent us this message in this week. He goes, Malcolm used to have his boutique in Newgate Shopping Centre. It's brought back so many memories, this photograph. In the Boulevard pub, my ex-head chef used to get hammered in the afternoon, then conduct the pass. The kitchen at the Swallow Hotel was split with the larder upstairs and main kitchen downstairs and connected by a tannoy, which was horrific. Some lovely people worked there, especially Mr. Muad, who was the maitre d', and Juan, the head waiter, and learned a lot, especially attention to detail with the art of silver service. He says, Gibbo will definitely recall the name of the front of house.
Well, I mean, yes, I went there loads and loads of times, and often that hotel is where Malcolm and I would meet when we were doing Malcolm's column.
That's right.
Right.
He would walk down from St. James's Park, and I would walk up from the Chronicle offices, and we met in the Swallow up on the top floor, which is where the dining room was, with a little bottle of white wine chilled in an ice bucket, and there we were. So happy days. And then I used to pop
looking
downstairs.
out over the whole of Newcastle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I popped downstairs to get me flares and me velvet jacket. So and kip a tie. So try picturing that and scaring the kids.
Fantastic. All right, let's get back to the comments. Thanks for that, Tim. I'm glad I remembered it. Neil, thanks for this. He says, on the 13th of March, it'll be 20,000 days since Newcastle won a major trophy, the Fairs Cup. Thanks, Neil. I hope you haven't been sitting in your house since then counting all of this, mate. But that is fantastic. That is a fantastic stat, mate.
He's been doing it day by day.
He's ticking it off. I hope he hasn't been doing it on his bedpost. It'll be unrecognisable now.
His bedpost would almost be as good as George Best's.
Yes, I see where you're going there. Just a couple of questions on the FA Cup before we go to the ads, lads, from me, and then we'll get into the viewers' questions in the second half. FA Cup draw. Jamie Carragher said yesterday he feels that you shouldn't do the cup draw until all the games have been played. And the second point, which I brought up on the breakfast show this morning, I don't think the semi-finals should be played at Wembley. So just those two issues, lads. What's your feelings on the cup draw? Like for instance, last night there's games to be played, and they're doing the FA Cup draw at 7:00 before before 3 games to be final.
I think, Steve, that Jamie Carragher can be an absolute prat at times, and very, very one-sided in too many of his opinions. But I think he's right in this instance that you have to wait till all the games are over and then do the draw. But it's all about money, isn't it? It's all about money.
Yes.
People are actually they're bidding to get the draw on television, and so timing really doesn't matter. It's all about the aggers.
It's. I mean, I agree with both those sentiments that I would prefer the draw to be when we know who all the sides are. I used to like the matches to be on a Saturday, in the old days, and the draw on a Monday live at 12 noon or whenever it was.
That's it. Yeah, Monday lunchtime.
Yeah, I used to love that. And I agree with Steve on this, as for Wembley in the semi-finals, I think that's a nonsense. They're devaluing what Wembley means. When you get to Wembley in an FA Cup final, it's such a special, special moment. But to play there in the semi-final and then play there in the final, you're devaluing it. And surely these days, the grounds that are outside, Hillsborough's nowhere near the ground it was when it took our semi-final in 74. That's all gone. But when you think of the wonderful stadiums there are, which include St James's Park and Manchester United and Liverpool with the new extra capacity, and you think that we get the Euros in this country or the World Cup, and we have wonderful stadiums that we use throughout we can easily find 2 venues for the semi-finals like they used to do in the old days when it was Hillsborough here in Aston Villa down in Birmingham or whatever. You can easily find neutral grounds to do, and of course it eases the travelling, because if it was 2 northern sides, they put them on at Hillsborough, and if it was southern sides, they put them on either at Spurs or
John, I think personally I would feel rather uncomfortable going and playing at Wembley in a semi-final, and and if you finish up winning, it sort of spoils the day of the final because you've been there.
It does.
Before.
It devalues the final, because you can play at Wembley sort of any time now, where it used to be that wonderful, elusive prize that only 2 sides got to Wembley and got to a final. Now that's all gone.
And why is it happening though? Could it be that it's all down to money?
You're beginning to look like you're not auditioning for Fagin there, Malcolm, are you?
Only fools at home.
If you are, you've got
Fagin.
I think you've got
Fagin's on the board at the Football Association.
Bill Sykes is doing security. Yes. We are halfway through the show. We've got plenty of questions. I'm sorry we'll not get to all of them, but I'll try and pick out the best ones for the second half. But we'll have a quick breather with the ads. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Go to their website, skipsandbins.com. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Go to their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. Go to their website, unitedgrouptravel.com. Email info@unitedgrouptravel.com or phone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. They're a local company from Morpeth and there are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. Big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button under the video. Click the thumb up to like the video and click share to share to your social media. If you want to help the channel financially, you can pay a one-off £25 fee. You get a cup, a scarf, a pen and a membership card and entry into the NUFC Matters monthly draw. Email john@nufcmatters.com for more details, or if you've got a smartphone, scan the QR code now and it takes you straight to the membership pack. We also support the food bank on this channel. Go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and you'll find the matchday bucket. You can make a donation virtually today. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify and other podcast providers. We also do events during the year. NUFC Matters Live will be at the O2 City Hall on Friday the 2nd of August for an evening with Rob Lee, one night in Antwerp. Tickets start at £15 and you can get them from ticketmaster.co.uk. An evening with the entertainers takes place on Friday the 24th of January 2025 at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House in Newcastle. Telephone 0844 249 1000 or visit the website tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk to buy tickets today. You can also catch me on the North East Footy Breakfast Show live on Toon Radio weekdays 7 till 9 a.m. on DAB, smart speakers and the toonuk.com. Don't forget, you can get your tickets for the end of season due with Supermac and Gibbo, 20th of July at the Irish Centre, 5 o'clock till late from newcastlelegends.com or nufcmatters.com. Get your tickets today. They're a tenner and we are raising money for Dementia Matters. And Gibbo will be with Ando up at the Irish Club at 1 o'clock on Saturday, pre-match before the Wolves game. Let's hope Newcastle play a bit better than they have in the last couple of games. Otherwise, that's not going to be a pleasant weekend, but we will come to that in due course. Plenty of questions, as I said, coming in. We're going to leave the current stuff for now. Lots of people want to talk about, the stuff that we've just discussed, the FA Cup. Lots of people got questions about, what could happen, what might not happen. I'm going to go for Eamon's question. Lads, have you any idea why young Lewis Hall seems to be getting frozen out at Newcastle, particularly as he was so impressive as a left back at Chelsea? It's a strange case, this, John. I'll come to you because you've got your ear to the ground with these kind of things. Any idea what the situation is with Hall? It's a strange one.
Yeah. Oh, it is absolutely strange. And what makes it even more strange is that we are supposed to be committed to paying a minimum of 25 million, which could rise to 30 million in the summer. That part of the loan agreement was that we didn't want to pay the money immediately because of financial fair play laws, and we wanted to take the money into next year's budget. And so it was agreed to do it that way. Now, Newcastle United, or in particular Eddie Howe, because Eddie's the only person at Newcastle United you can ask. In the old days, I could phone Lord Westwood or Freddie Shepherd or John Hall in the morning anytime I wanted and talk to him and ask him questions. But and Eddie refuses, and it's easy, and I can understand. I'm not having a go at Eddie. He sort of says, well, this is for people above me, the transfer, but I'm led to believe. So you don't get an answer. Nobody at Newcastle's answered whether we are 100% committed to having to buy this fella in the summer or whether we can wiggle out of it. Now, the simple answer to the problem is that Hall was signed by the scouting staff and when he's arrived here, Eddie thinks he's nowhere near ready for the first team. He thinks defensively he's not on blob. He needs to do things slightly different, etc., etc. We have not had a left back all season. We've played Livramento. We've played either a centre half at left back, which is Byrne, or a right back at left back, which is Livramento. We haven't had a left back, which is what Hall's supposed to be.
Sure, and Trippier for a game.
And Trippier for a game played there where England played.
Yeah.
But we haven't had a left back, and Hall is a left back who's supposed to be worth 30 million. It is an absolute nonsense. And the management has not been pushed enough to tell us whether we've got to sign him in the summer or not. If a certain criteria is met, well, what's that? I don't think it's X number of games. I mean, would make sense if it was, because the fact he isn't playing him means that Eddie doesn't want to buy him in the summer, and as long as he doesn't put him on the pitch, he won't have to buy him. Is that the case? I'm sorry, but they won't answer the question, and it's doing Eddie no favors not answering this question, because people are saying, with the defence as bad as it is, and this guy's up to a £30 million left back, and he can't get a game, you can't get on as a sub, never mind a start now. So, there's something sadly wrong. Yes, the people that scouted him and decided to sign him, and the manager that then got him, have got a difference of opinion. The original people that brought him here obviously rate him very highly as a young kid for the future, and obviously the manager doesn't. Or he certainly doesn't for the moment. He's thinking, if I get a year working with him, I might be able to knock him into some sort of player. But spend 30 million on that. I mean, it is ludicrous. And by the way, we're saying this because we care about Newcastle United. But think what it must be like for the kid. He's thinking he got his dream move because he's been a Newcastle United fan all his life. He comes up here and he's taken a year out of his career, in effect, hasn't he? Because he's just not playing. He's just taken a year out of his career. So we never think of the lad. We think of what's Newcastle doing and what's gone wrong, and how we commit, and all that's correct. But it must be heartbreaking for the boy. And a Geordie who come to Newcastle United, he thinks a Geordie background through his dad. He's not a Geordie, but his dad is. And this has happened to him. It's dreadful for him too.
Yeah. Also, John, I'm just getting the impression from the whole situation, from and what's happened on other things with regards to the club in recent weeks and months. I get the feeling that Eddie Howe is strengthening his position to include having a much more powerful say with regards to transfers. Ashworth has gone, and I got the feeling that Ashworth, there was something not suiting him at the ground, which is why he was prepared to go straight away. There was something not suiting him, and I just wonder whether that Eddie Howe is making a play for greater control, and the way in which Hall was signed for the club, I don't think Eddie Howe likes it, but at the same time, he doesn't. A lot of the reason that he doesn't like it is that he wouldn't have touched the player in the first place. I don't think it wasn't to his mind. It wasn't to his thinking, and I think that's left poor Hall with a seriously uphill battle at Newcastle United. He's got to go leaps and bounds to prove himself to the manager that he's good enough to play. And the little that I've seen of him, where he's come on for the odd 2 or 3 minutes here and 5 minutes there, he's not come on and done himself any favours up to the moment. And so at the moment, Eddie Howe, I think, is he can say, well, I'm being proved right by these short-term performances that he's coming on for late in games. But I think that there is a power struggle going on as well. And I think Eddie Howe at the moment is winning that.
I think one of the interesting things, I saw one of our lovely listeners putting a message along the back saying there must be, and I can understand the guy's theory, there must be some sort of understanding, etc., between Newcastle and Hall himself. Because if it was just a matter of we didn't fancy him, we would have sent him back. But when you do a deal whereby you've got somebody on loan with an obligation to buy him,
yes,
not the opportunity to buy him, you can't send him back because the deal is that he's yours and you pay for him at the end of the season. So it's not a loan that you can terminate and send back.
That's right.
If the deal is you have him for a year on loan with an obligation to buy him. In other words, you're only trying to get around financial fair play by spending the money in the next year's budget instead of this year's budget. So if that is the case, which is what we were told when the young lad first came here, and it's never been clarified since, but if, and nobody's corrected that, and if that's the case, we can't send him back. We're obligated to having him and buying him at the end of the season. Now, maybe, and this is a possibility, we are now looking at the legal side and saying, is there a legal way that we can get out of this and send him back? It really is very, very intriguing. And in a lot of cases, this can happen because the new, in Malcolm's day when he was a player, Joe Harvey, the manager, was in charge of everything and he bought the players. So there wasn't two different opinions. Nowadays, either through a director of football or a chief scout or whatever it is, you often get a situation where a club buys players and hands them over to the manager, who is effectively just the coach, and he coaches them and selects a team.
Yeah,
and
which is why.
Then
why I think that Eddie Howe he's become a lot more than just the first team coach.
Oh, yeah. But in fairness, Malcolm, yes, I take the exact point you're making. But in fairness, it was always said from when Eddie Howe first came here and with a new ownership, of course, that Eddie Howe had the last word on, and still has, the last word on transfers. Now, it may be that he didn't know this kid and said, okay, yeah, sure, we'll have him in and see what he's like. But you can't think that if we are committed to spending up to 30 million in the summer, that Eddie wouldn't have had a say in that, because it's in the interest of the club. Because if we bring him in and then the manager doesn't fancy him when he sees him train and won't play him, it's 30 million down the drain, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because you bring in anybody. You can bring in anybody you like, but unless the manager plays him, and you can't force the manager to play him.
Sure, but I think the manager's he's upset about this because we are limited in ridiculous fashion as far as FFP is concerned, and so we are very limited as to what we can do in the transfer market. And the last thing that Eddie Howe needs is £30 million to be spent on a player who he doesn't want.
I mean, it is fascinating. And I mean, I've been trumpeting on about this since the beginning of the season. And it's only now with other people, and I don't mean us three, I'm talking about other journos and other people are sort of saying, yes, because it's so outrageous, what on earth is happening? Now, it's obvious we're not going to find out between now and the end of the season, because a couple of questions asked at Eddie, he's the world's best at batting away questions, and that's meant as a compliment, which is what he does at the press conference. So we're not going to find out. But in the summer, we're going to have to find out, because the boy either goes back or we are obligated and he can't go back and we've got to sign him. Then we've got a real problem, because 30 million does go out of the budget, the summer's budget, And is it wasted?
Yeah.
But I've also just would like to say, because nobody considers it, I do feel sorry for the boy. He's a young boy that got his dream move. How is he feeling? It's awful for him. It's awful for him. That's got to be said. You know, that is not the problem of Eddie Howe, maybe. It's not the problem of the supporters who just say a wastage of money, but it's a problem of the player. Now, if it is that Eddie Howe's looked at the boy and thinks there's a real footballer in there, he's got a good touch, he's got a good vision going forward, he can go forward, he's not sort of like Dan Burner who finds it difficult to go forward. There's something to work on. He's not ready yet, but he's just a bairn and he will be a good player eventually, so I'm not going to play him, but then say that publicly. Take the pressure off yourself and take the pressure off Lewis by saying this guy has got a terrific future, but at the moment he's still learning how to defend, and I want my back four to be able to defend as well as attack. At least say it so that the situation, because at the moment it's just
it would help. I think it would help, John, and I think it should be done. I agree with you on that. But at the same time, this is make or break for Lewis Hall. It's coming at a very young age for him, but it is a true make or break situation. What he's got to do is go out and prove that he's the best left back in the club. And it's not as if he's got stiff opposition to face on this. He hasn't. And it's up to him to get out on both on the training field and the match pitches when he's involved, and just absolutely be brilliant. That's what Eddie Howe's after. He will pick the lad. Of course he will, if the lad is showing some real brilliance.
It will
obviously at the moment he's not showing it.
But he'll have to show up Monday to Friday, and it's hard in training unless you have a match, because he never gets on the field to prove it on match day. He doesn't start and he doesn't get on as a sub.
Sure.
So can he prove? Can he prove?
Yeah, and there are those players. I don't know whether this applies to the young lad, but there are those players who don't really do it much on the training field, but are absolutely brilliant out on the pitch on a Saturday,
Tony,
in
hey,
matches.
one of our mates was like that, Malcolm. Tony Green.
Oh, crikey, yeah. Oh, Green he was. Yeah, what he did in a match, he never ever did on a training field. Never did it. And in fact, he looked as if he was a schoolboy who had just sort of been brought in to make the numbers up. But on a match day, he was just something totally different.
Fascinating. Geordie boy, there's always somebody with a flip opinion. I'm sick of the whinging and nitpicking of every little decision Eddie makes unless we win 3-0 convincingly. There's so much bitching and moaning, we've become a proper privileged fan base. I don't think there's anything wrong about being a critical friend, Geordie boy. I genuinely think Newcastle United's in one of those situations which only Newcastle United can get into. And I think I've discussed this on every show this week. I just think my opinion is very simple. I don't think Newcastle have been, I don't think they overachieved last season. They finished where they should have finished because they were bloody good in the league. They found the consistency and they got to a cup final. Were found out in the cup final, unfortunately. This season, I think the players and the formation has been found out. We've obviously had bad injuries, but I also think, I just think the lads can't do what Eddie wants them to do anymore. I also think something's happened in the dressing room. It looks very obvious that something's not right. And all of this talk of transfers in January, of course, that's going to unsettle the dressing room. Kieran Trippier was halfway to Germany in January. Now he's there. He clearly wants to depart the club in some way, shape, or form. It's coming up to his very last contract. I just think there's been a major movement in that dressing room, and I think the injuries haven't helped. I think Eddie's reluctance to even change formation hasn't helped. I think there's a multitude of reasons, and I don't think it can specifically say it's one. And I think that if Newcastle don't qualify, this is my opinion again, not the lad's opinion. I genuinely think that if Newcastle don't qualify for Europe this year, I think the Saudis will change the manager. I think they will say this isn't good enough. And you can say, well, hasn't Eddie got a bit credit from what he's done? I don't think the Saudis will give a monkeys about what Eddie did in the 2 years. I think they'll thank him and he'll move on. But I don't think the Saudis will take well to this. I think they're getting. I get the feeling as well that they're almost getting sick and tired of what's going on with the Premier League. The Premier League keep moving the goalposts. I think there's a weird feeling at the moment. And that, John, Malcolm, you've been around the club a lot longer than I have.
Steve, I'd be very, very surprised if they were to take such action on Eddie Howe. I agree with you about the Premier League and all that's going on. And just to follow that up, have you ever known anything so ridiculous as to suddenly, in the middle of the season, or in the second half of the season, give a club who was in the relegation zone 4 points for nothing?
Yeah,
which is what they've done with Everton. And how do you think Luton feel about that in particular? Luton, Nottingham Forest, they must be scratching their heads and thinking, what the bloody hell's going on? This is ridiculous. All of a sudden, in the second half of the season, when we're 2.5 months from the end of the season, all of a sudden they just give a club 4 points for nothing. I think it's madness, absolute sheer madness. If they're saying that, we're going to do the right thing by Everton. Everton were found guilty in the first place. And the real punishment that has taken place this month is on Nottingham Forest and Luton and one or two other clubs as well. And I think it's an absolute farcical disgrace.
John?
Well, there you weren't expecting that, Steve.
No. John, what's your thoughts?
Sorry?
What's your thoughts, John, on what I had to say there?
Interesting, intriguing. I can follow your reasoning on both things. Because the thing with Eddie, I mean, Eddie has done so well for us, but the common denominator that we don't know is the feeling of the Saudis. We know a little bit about, Amanda Stavely and the Rubens and I think they're pretty loyal to Eddie. And it may be that the Saudis are, but we don't know. We never hear from the Saudis and they own 80%. So it sounds harsh, but it almost doesn't matter what Amanda and Jamie Rubens say in the long term, because 80% trumps 20%, which is cut up between the two of them. And so it's only what the Saudis think that matters. It's intriguing.
And most of that thinking, John, going on over in the Middle East.
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
it's not happening here, is it?
No, it's happening completely over there. And we don't know what they're thinking at all.
Sure.
Do they expect... We know Amanda and etc. gives us little hints about this and little hints about that, but we don't know what the big boys are thinking out there, and only the big boys matter because their 80% trumps everything. That's quite obvious. So if they want to do something, they leave a lot of the daily running of the club to Amanda and her husband and Jamie Rubin. But if they want to move in and do something, their 80% is all that matters. So we don't know what the feeling is on the Eddie's situation because you never hear about them. What was also interesting, what Steve says, and at the time people poo-pooed me a little bit, but when was it Mr. Eels that came out and said, no, it was, or was it Dan? I think it may have been Dan. When he came out and said, the truth of the matter is that we might have to move on players to be able to buy. Now, when that was said, I thought, don't say it publicly. Now, they're saying they said it publicly to sort of forewarn fans so they didn't get shocked or if something happened. But what it did was warn every single club in the country and abroad that if you wanted to sign a Newcastle player and you offered enough money, you can sign them because Newcastle won't say no. And that opened the door to speculation about will Bruno's selling clause be matched in who can go. And we almost had Trippier on his way to Germany, which Steve mentioned. We almost had Callum Wilson going as a backup striker to about three different places. We had Almiron going to be sold to the Saudis, which Almiron hated and didn't want to happen and stopped happening. And by the way, I thought he played well at Blackburn, but until Blackburn, he hasn't played well at all. Is there a hangover over he's worrying about his future because he was almost sold to Saudi when he didn't want to go? We don't know. But yes, there's all sorts of little things come into the pot. And I don't think, I mean, I mentioned earlier on, we don't have a plan B. Tactically, we'll go 4-3-3, and all the subs are like for like. They're not, you don't take off a winger and put two strikers down the middle and change the system or whatever. We very, very rarely do that. When we do change the system, it stands out, doesn't it? When we went to Villa and changed the system by taking Burn off left back and into a 3 and Fermento on, and we defended the lead magnificently. That stands out in our memory because it's about the only time the actual system has been changed. Because even when things change on the pitch, the other home game, we played 3 centre forwards. When we tried Gordon, and then we tried Murphy, and we tried Harvey Barnes. But the system never changed. It was still one striker down the middle and 2 wings. We don't change systems tactically. We haven't seemed to get the intensity that we've had before. There's loads and loads of little things which add up. And if you put them all in the boiling pot, it's a reason why we're not quite what we were. And now a lot of people say, are we being too harsh on Newcastle United? And I understand that feeling, and we're not ungrateful for where we are. We're thrilled to bits, but it's because we care. We want us to make moves forward. And if you see something going wrong and you ignore it or you pretend it doesn't exist, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until the problem's ginormous and you can't do anything about it. And I think we're at the situation where we've got to do something about it. I mean, we are going to play Wolves on Saturday. Look at our last home games. 2 goals let in against Bournemouth, while equalised in the last minute to get a single point. 4 goals let in against Luton. We're 4-2 down.
Yep.
We lost it up to Man City 3-2. Well, we'll accept that one. But before that, 3-1 at home to Forest. We let in 3 goals to Forest. I mean, now they're warnings.
Absolutely shocking.
They're warnings, though. And if we ignore them, do we let in a minimum of 2 goals against Wolves? And then the next home game, there's something dreadfully wrong, and it might be just a few little things. Can we still play the high press game? Because have we got the legs to do it? Have the team got exhausted from doing it? Can you remember when Bielsa, what they call the guy, the South American manager at Leeds,
remember Bielsa?
Yeah, he played the high press game at Leeds, and it was sensational. Remember when they first come up, the first season up, they were sensational. They were like we were last season. They were sensational. They didn't get as high as us. But
I'm not sure where he is now, but I understand that he's having great success using the same tactics.
He's an international manager in South America, somewhere, whether it's Uruguay or but the Leeds team in the second and third season couldn't keep that high press tempo going. They were sensational for one season. Then it was falling to bits, and that's when he left. And they start leaking goals like there was no tomorrow. Can you remember Leeds just before Bielsa went? They were letting 4 and 5 in because they couldn't keep up. They hadn't the legs, they hadn't the commitment. And by the way, to play the high press, every part of the team has got to be on block. All the wingers, the centre halves, the fullbacks, 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 the wingers, the centre halves, The front three's got to press high. The midfield three's got to move up behind them, all in a line, because if one of them doesn't, then it doesn't work. And then the back four push up. So the whole team have got to press, not just one or two people. And can we keep doing that season after season after season after season? I don't know. It may be the problem. It may not. But there's a lot of things out there to be looked at. And you know what? There's only one guy can look at him. And I referred to him in the Chronicle today, Dave O'Leary, and said that he's got to become Sherlock Holmes. Because he's got his solved so many flinking problems. He's got to be Sherlock Holmes.
Okay, we're into extra time, so let's just look ahead to the Wolves game. We play them on Saturday, 3 o'clock kickoff. No TV coverage, of course. Newcastle and Wolves both getting through into the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. Wolves beating Brighton, of course, by 1-0. It did come as a cost, as somebody's just mentioned in the chat. Their Premier League's top scorer, Hwang Hee-chan, was forced off due to injury and looks as if he will miss the game this Saturday, which is a bonus for Newcastle. Eddie Howe's team, of course, look to have come through unscathed, and John has already gone through the recent defeats that we've had at home and results we've had at home. Let's hope that it doesn't happen again this weekend. Referee is Tim Robinson. This is his third game in charge of a Newcastle fixture after the 4-0 home win over Crystal Palace and the 3-0 defeat at Everton. VAR is back after a break against Blackburn. David Coote is in charge of that. So, Malcolm, I'll come to you first. I am going to tip Newcastle to lose this game. I am going to go 2-1 to Wolves. I think Newcastle will score, but on current form, I can't see us beating Wolves this weekend. So I am going for a Newcastle defeat at home again, which I think the knives will be out if that happens. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm going for a defeat, Mal. What about you?
Well, Wolves are playing some terrific stuff at the moment. There was some great football from them against Brighton. If we sit back, then we're going to be in trouble. We have to start pushing up. We must start pushing up. But the fact that we've had some real near escapes at St James Park of late, and if we've got to start learning the lessons. I'm not so sure that we're going to win, but I have enough confidence to think that we won't lose. So I'm going to take a draw, but I think there will be goals, and I'll go 2 each.
Okay, Gibbo.
Those results that I had mentioned at home, Steve, it was saying while they were happening, when people are saying we're still unbeaten during this little tiny run because we've got the draws and all that, but we were going to get caught. Things were going to catch up with us, and now this last week things have caught up with us because two teams, Wolves and Brighton, in this last week have gone ahead of us. Wolves come here above Newcastle in the league table. Now, we wouldn't have thought that 4 or 5 weeks ago. We'd never have thought that 4 or 5 weeks ago. We are now down to 10th, which is literally the halfway position. But you know what? We're only 10th because Chelsea played in the Carabao Cup final at the weekend, and so they've got a game in hand. But they're only 2 points behind us. They win the game in hand and we're 11th. So we've gone down and down and down. Now, despite that, and I believe that we're in the horrendous form and we've got to face facts, etc., etc. But I am so desperate that I actually think Newcastle win, because I think, and you know why? Not with logic, not with the head, because the head tells me Newcastle are desperate and are getting worse every game, so that we will not, defeat us on the cards. The law of averages just tells me that we might be bad, but are we that bad? Are we that? Can we not get one win at home to go? Because we're going back since Christmas or since the New Year. We've really struggled, and I just think on the law of averages, we cannot keep going on like this, can we? And I honestly, I'm going 2-1. I'm going
Long
to.
live the law of average, John.
I don't want you to ask me why to be able to answer it logically, because logically I can't. But you wait and see. We'll be on the air next week. We'll be saying, Gibbo, did you have a crystal ball, or what produced that? 2-1 to Newcastle. 2-1 to Newcastle.
Gibbo, look forward to seeing you at the Irish Centre this weekend. Malcolm, look forward to catching you on here next week. Until then,
Yes,
thanks for joining us, and I'll see you next week. Take care, lads.
All right. Have
Take
a good
care,
weekend,
boys.
everybody. Enjoy your football.
Take care.